Alrighty, great. Very good. Jumping right in, I am going to give you a little bit of background about myself and then about our network and then some of the principles and things and experiences we've had. Um, you can go, if you want to learn more about me and my story, to this web link. I am an East Coast guy from Maryland, transplanted to the West Coast in California by way of Turkey and France. Here I am with the team that I led in Istanbul, Turkey in 1988 and 89. I ended up marrying a woman on that team, an amazing Persian American woman who is trilingual and a published author. My father-in-law was an Iranian Shiite Sayyid Haji Muslim. Sayyid is an honorific title given in the Shiite branch of Islam for those who are considered descendants of Muhammad. Sadly, my father-in-law passed away this past May at the age of 85, and to our knowledge, without knowing Christ. We in the 1980s were Paris, 1990s, excuse me, were Paris-based missionaries, reaching Muslim and international students throughout France, North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia, with the organization formerly known as Campus Crusade for Christ, now known as Cru. Today we've got three amazing kids who are descendants of Muhammad but followers of Jesus. Our 22-year-old son Quinn just graduated from college, is serving in the Middle East, in Beirut with Horizons International. I believe today he is in Diyarbakir, Turkey. Our daughter, 18, Elena, is in Paris this fall doing a study abroad program. And Sage, our 14-year-old, is a freshman in high school. In 2000, we moved from France to Southern California to lead new media at the Jesus Film Project. And for the next 7 years, I was able to lead a team of innovators as we created various media that actually is still going around the world today. In 2006, God began to stir up a handful of us to create a new platform to help the church more effectively communicate Christ in a visual way in our visual world. And so today, the Visual Story Network is this tribe of 2,100 visual communicators in 85 countries representing 260 organizations. Our goal is to reveal Christ to the ends of the earth through various forms of media. Our goal is to foster innovation in the mission arm of the church, and really in three areas in particular. One, in being more effective at communicating visually. Two, using story to reach and teach the nations. And three, to adopt innovation, in particular through mobile device technology. The three ways we really try to do this is be a catalytic influence, helping the church develop new ways of thinking, connecting like-minded people with one another, and then fostering collaboration. You can learn more if you want to just about what we do here at visualstory.org. One of the interesting things that's happened as we've gone down this road in these last 8 years is we've seen two ancillary networks established that have their own leadership, branding, and particular focus. The Mobile Ministry Forum began in 2009 with the help of Dave Hackett. The goal of this network is to really facilitate a movement of mobile device use so that everybody around the world has a chance to encounter Christ through their mobile device in ways that make sense to them. In these first 6 years, 150 people, 700 people from 150 organizations have participated in our various gatherings, webinars, trainings, and so forth. I facilitate a team of 6 of us who lead this initiative from 6 different organizations. The other one is the Middle East Women's Leadership Network. You can find out more at this link. It was started in 2013, and its goal is to equip and empower women leaders to help fulfill the Great Commission in the Middle East. In these first couple of years, 100 women from 40 organizations have been involved in various aspects of the network. We just came off an exciting weekend, actually here in Los Angeles this past weekend. We had 55 women from 40 organizations for a day and a half of training. A lot of them are using media. They're television broadcasters. This network is facilitated by my wife, Shireen. I want to talk, before we take a break and do a poll, about a pattern that I've seen. And if I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with Phil Butler's book, Well Connected. If you haven't read it, you must. If you haven't read that, then at the very least, read a 20-page PDF version of it that kind of distills the essence of the book. And if you haven't read that, you must read a one-page print thing that Dave's put together. It's called The 8 Keys to Effective Partnership, but really become acquainted with that book. I continue to look to the Vision Synergy team as mentors, Sherpas, and friends. They've helped us in so many ways with all of our networks over these last 7 to 8 years. I've also had the privilege of leading new media at the Jesus Film for a number of years, and it was interesting because of the DNA of that ministry. We were very intentional about working with other organizations. So anytime we came up with a new project, we involved many others, and there was that need to be able to work together. But here's this pattern that I've seen that really starts with helping God birth a new network of collaborative people. First, God has to stir and unite hearts of a few key people around a common need. With the Visual Story Network, that was Jim Green and Rob Hoskins. They were in an airport in Bangkok, Thailand in the year 2005. And they got together and started talking about how can we help the global church more effectively communicate Christ in this visual world. And they both had this deep burden. So when Jim got back, since I was leading a whole team of new media, Jim said he wanted my team to give some thought to this. I assigned it to one of the guys on my team. We had an exploratory meeting in Orlando of May of 2006. And it was one of the most awkward moments of my life because I found myself towards the end of the day in this room with leaders, 20 leaders from 6 different organizations. And as my team members were facilitating the discussion, we used the SWOT analysis, and we got to the T for threats, and the question was raised, well, one of the threats is leadership. Who's going to own this? And there was an awkward silence, followed by Jim Green, then the director of the Jesus Film, standing up, looking at me and saying, with a tear in his eyes, I believe God is calling Clyde Taber to lead this network. Well, I looked over my shoulder to see if there was another Clyde in the room, and I realized there wasn't. And I was put in an awkward situation where I was inspired by the discussion, but I was skeptical about where this could go and what my role could be given bandwidth. Well, I said then that I would take on the responsibility for 3 months to kind of get this thing started. Well, that was 113 months ago. Anyway, God has to stir up some key people. Second thing, the need has to address a common vision that's big enough to require the participation of believers from a lot of organizations. The task needs to be sufficiently large that it will take years, if not decades, to complete. The third thing is a core group needs to begin to meet, to pray, and to articulate a common vision. It's going to take time to make that vision really clear. With the Visual Story Network and the Mobile Ministry Forum, it took us a year, I would say, to really articulate what we were and what we were not. Then fourth, trust has to be established. It's kind of like where the slow dance is on the dance floor. Is you don't feel like you're making a lot of progress. There are a series of bridges that you have to cross to form trust. I need to meet you in order to know you. I need to know you in order to like you. I need to like you in order to trust you. And I must trust you if I'm ever going to risk working with you in any way. This can be done for a while virtually, but eventually you're going to have to get together face-to-face, and lots of hours of face-to-face time is critical. With our Mobile Ministry Forum, we had a year of conference calls on a monthly basis. Dave was a part of those back in 2009, and after about 12 months, we got to the point realizing we got to meet. So we finally did. 13 of us spent 3 days at the home of Steve and Nancy Keel in Ringgold, Virginia. 3 more, including Dave, participated for those entire hour, all those hours via the internet. And after that, we had this core, a common vision, a common heart, some ideas, and it really was a critical foundation. The next thing that God does in this pattern is that small projects begin to be taken on by that group. It's something that's going to require participation from multiple organizations. This is where you cross those other bridges. First, it's communication, then it's cooperation, then coordination, and only then can you consider collaboration. You can find that great continuum, by the way, on the Vision Synergy Commons. I'm, again, indebted to the resources that the team has provided. The next thing then that happens in this pattern is the group celebrates and communicates all your successes. You assemble best practices, and then you invite others to get involved. One of the tricks is to match interest, giftedness, and capacity with the needs that are identified within that network. So we typically don't necessarily give people specific titles. We just work hard at putting people in places where they actually get to use their gifts. The other thing that I'll suggest is you need to raise money. I'll talk more about that. And then lastly, you have a long obedience in the same direction. In other words, once you've got something good, you just keep going, you build, you scale. So we're going to take a little pause. I'm going to jump now to, I'll come back to results, but can we go ahead and do that first poll, Lucas? So if you're online, you can just click. How would you describe the status of your current collaborative effort? Are you still articulating the vision? Have you begun to work on projects together, or would you describe yourself as a vibrant, growing, collaborative community? I guess I get to do this as well. So log in here too. All right. And let me ask you, Dave, if you wanted to unmute. Dave, do you want to throw a question in or comment on the poll before I jump in? Dave, can you unmute real quick?
Yeah, let's just look at it here. And it looks like
okay, so
this group here,
right now, yeah, like people are still kind of, you know, that early phase of how do you get traction, which is a great place but a hard place to be.
so
Any
which
thoughts, comments
you
from your side, Dave?
would you say is really helpful for them to be thinking about?
Say that again. What's most helpful for them?
Given that more of the folks here are looking at the earlier side of it, what would you say would be helpful for them as they're articulating the vision?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to keep drawing people together again, whether that's in an online, virtual kind of forum or in face-to-face meetings. You've just got to, if God is birthing something, there will be A, significant interest, B, shared burden, and a willingness to cross organizational lines for the sake of the greater good. If those things are not in place, you may not be ready for a network. But when God brings those things together, amazing things can happen. Now, it does take time, and I'll comment more about that later. Any other thoughts, Dave?
No, let's move forward here.
All right. I'm going to actually go back. If you can go back to my slide. Thank you. I'm going to talk about results for just a second. These are some of the things that we have seen in our first, 2000, I guess 8+ years now. We can count 139 different projects, products, and partnerships that have come about as a result of the network. Now, we define a project as something that's short-term with a beginning and an end, typically an event or a training of some kind. A product, in our definition, is a resource that gets released and is available to a wide number of people, like a curriculum or an online course. A partnership is when two or more organizations or people get together to begin to work together because of their association with the network. Of the 139 projects, products, and partnerships we've seen, 72 of those have been projects, 30 are products, and the other 37 have been partnerships. Now, our goal is to foster movements. We want to see the Spirit of God do fresh things so that the body of Christ, in particular the mission arm of the church, is more effective in communicating Christ and kingdom. So we want to see that happen in terms of visual communication, in terms of effective use of story in reaching and teaching the nations, and then thirdly, adopting innovation through this mobile strategy. In the area of where I think we've seen the most success, I would say it's probably been in this mobile space. It's where we've seen the most products, projects, and partnerships established. And there's a sense that, and not only because of us, but in part, that, okay, this crazy mobile device, that it's in everyone's hands, has to be a part of our mission outreach strategy. In the world of outcomes versus outputs, and if you've done any foundation work, you're going to become familiar with these terms. Output is what you do. Outcome is what transformation happens on the field. Much of what we measure still, I would have to say, would be under what is considered an output. And so we measure everything we can. Measuring outcomes, it's a tricky thing. And it's something that I know that most nonprofits are still struggling with. And while we've seen a lot of individuals, I think, really experience transformation in their mission practice, they've become more innovative in one of these three areas. I love it when an organization really gets impacted. So one of my favorite stories is Renew World Outreach. They're based in Atlanta. They provide technology resources to mission organizations around the world so that they can either via audio or through visual means communicate the gospel. Well, as a result of their association through the Mobile Ministry Forum about 3 years ago, they really took a shift in their focus and said, you know, we're going to still do solar stuff. We're still going to do backpacks to show the Jesus film in jungles. But we're really going to shift and start developing content for mobile devices because everybody has one. I'm thrilled when we see organizations really impacted by the way, how they do what they do as a result of their association with us. Well, then let me go on and give you some examples of kinds of things that we see. So we've hosted, the first would be this area of events. We've hosted 27 events that bring people together for the purpose of networking, collaboration, and training. Now, this usually involves anywhere from 5 to 50 different organizations for a single or multi-day event. The mobile ministry consultation has become our biggest, most consistent gathering or event. We've done it 5 different times. We try not to do it on an annual basis, but we've seen a lot of people get involved with that. Gatherings are great for relationships, training, and bringing new people into your network. Whenever we do a gathering, we always make it a collaborative thing. We put together a team of designers who, for multiple organizations, help figure out what the program should be. Another way we actually collaborate on events is we actually partner with other kind of freestanding events. So with Steve Bauman from the Eurasian Media Distribution Consultation, we've partnered several times where we'll cross-promote, and then he'll have his event Monday through Thursday, and then we'll bring our event on Friday and Saturday. They're still standalone, separately branded events, but we really work together to make each other's more impactful. Events are very, very catalytic, but they're also very time and money intensive. One of the other ways I'll give you some other examples, is just resources. So as we identify needs, we're able to collaboratively develop resources that serve the larger body. Most people offer resources that are more internal. We work to do things that can serve a larger number of organizations. And these typically fall into 3 categories, either best practice lists, curriculums, or again, online courses. One of my favorite stories is our online course. We started it 4 years ago. It's run anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks in length. We actually have a cohort right now of 15 to 16 people in a 4-week course where they get an introduction to mobile device technology and how to use that in ministry. John Edmiston is kind of the key leader and architect, but a number of us from multiple organizations really promote and then even facilitate that course several times each year. One of the other example areas is just in the area of strategies. Once you begin to collaborate, you can see strategies develop. One is the Visual Media Strategy Forum. We work closely with the 2020 vision, which is a vision to see all of the least evangelized mega people groups adopted so that indigenous evangelistic short format films will be made for those people. The Jesus film may already exist, but part of the reason the Jesus film co-founded the Visual Story Network. I've since left the Jesus film, but we relate closely. As they realized, as powerful as the film is, it's not going to be just about the film anymore. We need to create more indigenous content that's language specific, and that's part of the vision, the 2020 vision strategy. Another strategy that's really in process right now is a micro SD card outreach as a result of the ISIS crisis. Millions of refugees flowing into Europe, kind of put in these camps. So we're beginning to develop and work a strategy with multiple organizations to put content on micro SD cards that they can use on their mobile phones. We're still looking for more partners with that, so if you have any suggestions, please let me know. Let me talk briefly then about some benefits of partnership. One of those is that we are more catalytic together than we are alone. For us, one of the needs is helping the church understand the power of media, but then overcoming the fear of adopting media. There's usually just this barrier to entry, and so when we collaborate and get together and find success stories, those who've been early adopters and innovators, and start to share that with the early majority, we see people begin to jump into the water and make changes in the way they do ministry. Another reason or benefit is best practices. As we work together, again, now with hundreds of organizations, it's much easier to identify what's working, where, and why. Again, the Jesus Film realized we needed to create more indigenous content. So it's not just about the Jesus Film anymore, but it's about creating content with, for, and by the people. And that's part of why we do what we do. The age of broadcasting has largely diminished. And the age of narrowcasting, language specific, format, technology, length, all of that worldview specific, that narrowcasting world has exploded. Another benefit is media is a team sport. And while as a network we've only collaborated on a handful of actual media projects, we work really hard to put people together with like-minded people who would benefit probably from working with one another because they can do more together than they can alone. I'll comment briefly about measurement. We try to measure everything we can. The big strategy or categories for us, as I mentioned, are projects, products, and partnerships. But we measure who comes to events, who's online, who participates in what ways. We have Google Docs and Google Sheets that measure who's involved. We try to see kind of a little scale of how involved they are and who's more likely to get more involved. We count whatever we can. I would encourage you to count whatever you can. Now, here are some tools that we use that have been really helpful in our collaborative world. Because it's a digital world, you can cross geographic boundaries now without great cost. So I'll mention these couple of areas. Social media, we use Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo, LinkedIn. We use various apps to help us communicate across all of those platforms at the same time. The Buffer app, Social Pilot is another. We use meetings. Our meeting format right now, you're in an Adobe Connect meeting. We use WebEx. There's a lot of GoToMeeting kinds of softwares out there. In fact, when we do live events, we typically also try to bring in remote participants by broadcasting live for those who've registered and paid. Not a free streaming service. We want them to actually be in the meeting with us for a number of hours, and it works. In our last mobile ministry consultation in Holland, we had 85 people in the room, but then another 11 who participated remotely. And they were involved, like they were chatting, asking questions, getting to know each other. We've also used Google Hangouts to a certain extent. And then on the web, we've had a lot of success with the Ning platform for the VSN site. And for the other two sites, Mobile Ministry and Women's Leadership, we've just used the WordPress platform, which is like a standard website. For project management, we still use Google Docs, but more and more we're moving over to Trello boards. Great way to manage projects from multiple people, multiple organizations. In terms of email, we use Constant Contact because you want to be able to consistently communicate with your people. And then for our online course, there's lots of learning management systems out there. We have chosen to use Moodle because it's an open source platform. But we would love to know, especially if you have experiences with learning management systems, what's worked for you and why. We're always trying to improve the widget, if you will. So let's take another pause, and Dave, let's go to our next poll. So do you feel right now that in your network you are effectively using collaborative tools? Just give me a yes or a no. All right, anybody else want to log in? Oh, we got some no's. Oh, the no's, it's tied. Oh, I love this. And Dave, feel free to unmute so we can both comment on this.
I'm unmuted.
Okay, interesting. So maybe at the Q&A, this may come up where, we can talk a little bit more about this if that's of interest to folks. Anyway, any thoughts, comments, Dave?
Tools have been continually evolving, and part of it is just sticking with one long enough and then knowing when it might be best to switch to another. How often have you seen your group switching tools?
Not infrequently. I mean, if we find something that seems to work better, and again, this is like our core team of our core mobile team is like 6 people. If you had hundreds of people, the switch would be a lot harder. But for our core team, jumping over to Trello has been relatively easy. We're kind of migrating from WebEx over to Google Hangouts. Now, if it was something like the online course or email, that takes a lot more work. But yeah, if there's in this digital world, there's always new stuff coming up, and I always try to stay on top of it to say, how can that help us do what we need to do better, faster, and maybe even less expensively? So we're always looking.
Okay, good.
All right, here, if you want, I'll just dive into my final segment, and then we'll do Q&A. All right. Well, I'm going to end with some of what I would describe as my bonus feature section. This is just a few thoughts from my experience on how to make your network work. So here goes my bonus feature thoughts. And again, I will just give to Dave my notes, and so you can read all of the things that I've mentioned here in case you've missed something and you're frustrated. So one of my ideas in developing a network is to be patient. Have a long view. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in 2 years and underestimate what they can accomplish in 5. And then secondly is I would say you need to fill the gaps. If you're the facilitator of the network, you're going to be frustrated by broken promises. Intentions are good, but bandwidth is narrow for most people. You're going to have to find a way to pick up dropped balls. You may have to do them yourself. You may have to hire someone, or you may need to get somebody else from within the network to take on a particular area. If over a period of time that area is just not able to be addressed, you may just have to ask, okay, maybe that's something we're not able to incorporate at this point in time. We just had a very exciting meeting for 3 days here in Southern California. We had 25 participants in our mobile ministry team. We had our 6 core people. We had another 10 people that joined us who were kind of next level of involvement, and then another 10 who joined us via WebEx from around the world for those 3 days of meetings. And part of that time was identifying roles and taking on new responsibilities, coming up with new ideas. And so through Trello, we're able to have a parking lot. Like, here's literally the 20 ideas we'd love to do. But until God raises up the right person and the right resources, it's going to stay in the parking lot. And sometimes things get onto the highway of being owned, and then sometimes it takes the off-ramp and ends up back in the parking lot. So that's a very fluid process, but fill the gaps. Third, care for the people that you're working with. Whenever we start a meeting, we always spend the first 5 to 8 minutes to kind of let everybody give a 30-second update. How's it going? How's your family? What happened this week? What made you smile? And then we pray. If people feel cared for, if they feel like they're a part of your community, not just your task, they're going to be motivated to stay involved. Fourth is you're going to have to raise money, and I'll end with that in a second. And then lastly, I'll say taking ownership of communication. Dave in Vision Synergy will tell you that your communication, having short, consistent, brief, encouraging communications with the whole of your community is absolutely vital. For VSN, we send out a communique electronically to our about 1,800 people that we have emails for. Twice a month. For mobile ministry, which is about 700 people, we send that out once a month. You want it to be crisp, clear, again. helpful, providing best practices, new resources and tools, not just promoting, not just asking for them to do something for you. So let me end here with funding. I raise my own support, as I assume many of you do. It took me 3 years to figure out that we needed money for things other than just me for being able to pay for my own salary, which I do have done for 30 years. We needed money for projects. And so a couple of us began to submit foundation grant proposals. It took a while. Foundations are very tough. But after a couple of years, we've had success with, I think, 6 different foundations. In all total, I think we've received about $200,000. Most of that was for the Mobile Ministry Forum, some other projects. And anyway, and one of the things we do is we keep finances transparent within the members of our leadership team. Now, I've received money through the Visual Story Network. We are 501c3. Keith Williams has received foundation money through his organization, WEC. And while we have accountability within our own organizations for the sake of partnership, we actually, within our leadership team, kind of post all of the financials into a Google spreadsheet so that everyone can see at any given time how those funds are being used. And my last thought about funding is you never want to lead with funding. Money can be a really mixed message up front because you'll get people who end up getting involved for the wrong reason. If they think, oh, there's money here. If it's vision, passion, and burden and common calling, that's how you want to lay your foundation. But I have found that it's wonderful once you begin to take on particular projects and goals, is to have some money available to be either to be a problem solver or to be a kind of a get you unstuck when you're stuck on something. So if there's a task that just needs to be done, we go, oh, you know what, we're going to find an independent contractor who can do that for $500. Or, oh, this person who normally has funding to come to our event, their funding got cut, we're going to, we'll give them a partial scholarship of $500 to help them compensate them for their plane flight. And the organization comes up with the rest. So, and maybe before we dive into Q&A, let's, Lucas, now go into, and I'm going to do a quick screen share, and I'll show you some of the tools that I use in just my collaborative world. This is our Visual Story Network site. As I mentioned, that is on the Ning platform. That's useful because people are able to go in and create their own profile and post content. So Irv Clacius, who's with Campus Crusade, just went to this conference and wrote a report about his learnings at this gathering at the SIGGRAPH conference just a few weeks ago. People can post videos and so on and so forth there. That may or may not be useful. I know the Orality Network tried it. I don't know how much success they've had with it. It requires someone to own it, maintain it, and keep it fresh, and invite people to contribute posting content. This is our Trello board. This is our collaborative online project management space. We use this a lot in the last 6 months. So this MMF over here is our mobile ministry forum. And so we've got our potential priorities. This is our parking lot. Each one of these little cards is an idea. It's a desired task that we wish we could do. And we have 5 categories that we try to work on within that: advocate, catalyze, equip, collaborate, anticipate. Those are things we just don't have the bandwidth for. And then we have a bunch of things that are underway, and you can look at these again by category. So I'll pick, so right now, as I mentioned, this is one project. We have our current online course underway. That particular card represents that. You can again invite people to be a part of those projects. You can email so that there's one place where all those things are updated. I'm assuming most people are familiar with Google Drive. I just figured out I got I don't know, I can't think, hundreds and hundreds of documents on here. So I've got, Middle East Women's Leadership Network, Mission Media University, Mobile Ministry Forum, Story Movement, and under those I've got all kinds of things. Yeah, and then this is just a standard WordPress site. They're very easy. They're free. I think everything I've mentioned so far is free. Ning I do have to pay for. I do have to pay for Constant Contact because we've got like, I don't know, like 3,000 contacts in there. They've got various tiers depending on the number of contacts you have. And then this is like the Moodle platform for our online course. Anyway, those are just a few of the things that we use and have found to be very helpful. The great thing is that all of these things allow for a variety of administrators, so any one of us, numbers of us, can go in and update content. And I'm not even showing you Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all of those other things. So let's go back to the slide. And that's all I have for now.